good evening. Welcome to another edition of Life is People. Let's talk Graffiti Falls with the author himself. So before we go any further, dude, I want to start from the very beginning. Let's just discuss this. What was your process? So I'm going to go right to the very basics and beginning. Did you write this pen on paper? Did you write this on a notepad? How was your actual beginning process of the actual technicals of it?
I don't have a visual representation in front of me, but it was all written on just a small notepad, something like that. I don't remember exactly how long each page was supposed to be. Maybe just front and back of just like writing words. Just writing words. And I'm sure when you listen to it, you pick up on that. It's words. And one of the things the main character brings up cave drawings. And so the idea is I don't know, it was all written on the dumper. I was sitting on the toilet at work and I just wrote it. That's where I would write it. And I don't know, it was supposed to be a comic, like a graphic novel, so the structure wasn't supposed to be written like it was a novel or a short story or whatever. It was supposed to be like caption, bubble balloons, what have you. That didn't work out. I wrote the story anyway. Like I said, I think I had the small notepad, and each page or chapter was, I think, just front and back, non-stop, no spacing at all, just writing constantly. And yeah, this I don't know. I can't exactly say what the first idea for the story was or where it came from, but I don't know. The body of it really had to be built on the friendship aspect, which I think you get in the first like 3-4 pages. Where the main character talks about his past, his friendship, what he's doing, why he's doing it, and it just continues on as the story goes. Whether the friend is there or not, and sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. It's all up in the air. It's a very weird, in the mind of a madman. He tells you about his friendship. It builds up. He loses his friend. He searches for his friend. Everything that, as far as the story went, when the things came together, it just sort of came together. I really let it do its own thing. I did not try to force it. There was nothing I could do about that. I really didn't want to, because I don't know. It was such a weird story. Like, I'm the type of person to be weird and like write some weird shit down, but to be like, yeah, I'm gonna write a story about this guy who lives in this fictional subway tunnel underneath America, and this demon took his friend. Like, that's not an idea that you really come up with overnight. It's not something that you can stay attached to, because it's just like, this is fucking weird. But I think it was the same with Bad Ideas, where it just started with one idea and it started building, and the concept of it was really became about friendship and what this character would do for his friend, and it just sort of snowballed from there. And also Alan Moore, great obvious comic writer, graphic novel writer, whatever you want to call him, wizard of many sorts. Great inspiration on it, because one of the things I went with when doing it was the underground subway line, which was this sort of idea of a fictional turn of history, where you take, the history of the world, the history of whatever country, wherever you want your story to happen, and at some point it went in a different direction. And so this different direction for me was the underground subway line, which seemed like a great idea. Just a subway line that runs underground, super fast. It's like a bullet train. similar to what they would have in Japan, which they've had like forever. But this was kind of like America finally got the fucking hang of it. Instead of doing the space race, it was like the underground race, like to have that sort of tunnel system work, and eventually it doesn't work, and it fails, and the main character travels around underground for many, many years, not knowing what he's doing.
So on that process, and let's linger on that. Did you just put it on one page and another page? How much editing was involved? Did you go back or did you keep it as raw as it was when you wrote it?
I'm pretty sure it was 100% raw. I'd have to go, and I could go right now and like pick out in a pile of boxes my notepads that I used for Graffiti Falls. Once again, this big, and I have the rubber banded together. I know exactly what they look like and where they're at. I could pick them apart, and I'm pretty sure it was exactly the same. And even when recording it, that was a big thing. I was like, I'm not changing anything. If there was something that I thought was like really, really wrong as far as the story went, or like something that didn't make sense, I was willing to make that exception. Maybe, I don't know. Even if there was a glaring flaw, I might have been like, "Fuck it, nobody will notice." But for the most part, I was just like, "This is how it was written. This is how it was published. I'm putting it out there." Like I said, the way it was written, it's not conventional. It's staggered. It's poetic. It's disconnected. There's parts where he'll have two conversations going on at the same time. He'll be talking about one thing, he'll start talking about another thing, and then if you're not paying attention, you won't notice it, but he'll just bring up an old thought that he had before, and he'll just keep going and rambling, mumbling, and but it all does tumbleweed into itself. It makes sense. That's you can't make it not make it make sense. But yeah, just really tried to be as raw as possible when I created it. I anything I found too weird, I just left in. I really just, as I was reading it, I was still like, what the fuck is going on? When I listened to it, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It's beyond me. It's a piece of art. That's what it does. It's not supposed to be me. It's supposed to be beyond me. It's supposed to be something bigger, something that people are like, whoa, hey, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know either, but cool, yeah. And it's 3 hours long. It's a big fucking thing. But
yeah. But what I loved about it, I mean, you mentioned it there, and I was going to say the same thing. It came across, just listening to it, as very poetic. I love the way you would repeat lines. There'd be short little lines. Honestly, when I was listening to it, it came across as like, because obviously from a very visual perspective, it came across as a graphic novel, but listening to it, it's like, okay, this is all very short and I love the way it flowed. You could tell it was. That's one of the things I was going to bring up. It was a real stream of consciousness coming out, and it was so done properly. So you got to that point, which is the thing I always have to ask people who write stuff. At what point did you know, like when I create art or something like that, it's knowing when to stop? At what point did you was that quite a clarion moment where you went, okay, I've got to stop here, or did you have to sort of fight yourself and say, if I don't stop now, it's just going to go on and on and on? How did you sort of tackle the ending of it, and when to say that's it, done?
From what I can remember, it was probably I probably had the beginning, and then at some point I probably had the end, and it was just like one of the things I think creating is you dig yourself a hole, and you have to dig yourself out of that hole, and that's where that's sort of the creativity of it, is being like, I've built myself up to be this thing. Now I have to live up to it. And so I sort of had, I'm pretty sure I just had the beginning, I had the end, and then it was like, how do you fill it with the meat? How do you fill it with the guts? And that was where like the friendship thing came along. And I was like, you really have to establish, if this guy is going to be, you know, for anybody not familiar with the plot, it's pretty much an underground subway line was created in the 70s. It eventually closed. A dude and his best friend worked there, and his friend got taken by a giant demon. And so after it was closed, he's been spending years trying to find his friend and the demon that took him. And so part of the story really had to be, why would somebody do this? Why would he go, why would he spend years? Why would he give his entire life just to roam the underground in a cart, in a subway line, going in figure eights around America, just to search for his friend? So you had to build up that friendship. And then as he disappears, the friendship still goes. He's never actually gone. He's always still there, which, is obviously a metaphor for, somebody dying or just mourning in general. You go on, but they're still there. They're still influencing you. You still think about them. You still think about how what you do affects them, and, what they would say about what you're doing. And so his idea was, he's going to keep going, and he's just going to keep looking for his friend. And I don't know, like I said, each chapter is its own, each track is its own chapter, it's its own thing. It's supposed to convey a certain amount of information, which, comes down to like the, sort of like the nerd in the story writer, the producer, the guy who's saying like, hey, you got a budget, all right? So that's me telling myself, like, you've only got so long. You've got to, we got to break it down. We have to be a nerd. We have to say, so much is going to happen in each chapter, in each track. So every chapter became, to me, its own story, its own element, its own episode. It has to be, it has to portray all the information while at the same time being, it's like any sort of TV show. It's all the same TV show, but you have to follow certain guidelines, go along, get your information out, etc., etc. So there was a very anal, strict, policy of each chapter has to be about this or this or this or this. And that was, like I said, sitting on the dumper and just thinking, this track is this track is this, and then just writing them out. And like you said, stream of consciousness, great tool, amazing tool. It's only, when you edit yourself, you really find you're kind of doing a disfavor, because you can always edit yourself later. But if you want to do it right on, straightforward when you're writing, just write it.
Yeah.
And then deal with it.
So the other element of obviously when you listen to it, is every chapter it's got its own piece of music goes along with that. Now, was that something you went into and created in the moment? I mean, okay, I'm listening to the words and you're free flowing the music, or did you have kind of an idea of what will go with what chapter, and how did that process go?
I knew I'd have to talk about it. It's the easiest and like dumbest thing that I've ever done that made great stuff without really having to try. It was the short of it. When I made the first track, okay, when I did the vocals for it, I had no idea what I was going for when I was recording it. I had no idea what it would sound like. I didn't even know if I was going to use music. I was just like, fuck it. I really thought the story was great. Nobody was reading it. It didn't really go anywhere. Actually, it went absolutely nowhere. But I thought, it can't just end like that. So there's got to be something more to it. So I thought, what if I, read it the way that it, so people could hear it the way that I wrote it. And I think you can really hear that in my voice because it's a very droning, hypnotic. You could fall asleep to this, but at the same time be like creeped out. And after a while of listening to it, you have to shake it off. You have to just brush it off and be like, this is a lot going on. This is weird. I'm not used to this. And so when I first recorded it, I had no idea about music. For it, I didn't know what I was gonna do. So what I did was I took an old whatever beat that I had, and I could go through and tell you at certain points which beats were used for what, but basically just took a beat that I had. I dropped the beats per minute to 10 beats per minute. So something that would be like 80 beats per minute, 120 beats per minute, 130, 90, 95. Just drop all that shit to 10. Then I would take the pitch of everything and just drop that down to its lowest. And then just start clicking and punching and taking things away. I added some stuff, but not much, because not much was really needed. Really, it was just about taking things away. And so you might have a drum, which is like, the kick, the snare, the cymbal, etc., rim shot, whatever, and just start taking stuff away from that. So it's not playing the whole time. So it's just this really slow, like, wow. And certain instruments would be, if they were sampled, they would be stretched. So when I lowered it, it would sound very robotic, very electronic sound. And basically that's how a lot of the music came about. And so I just started going through all the tracks that I had, every beat that I had ever made, and just lowering the pitch, slowing the beats per minute all the way to 10, and just sitting there and listening to it and being like blown away. Like, this is some weird ambient shit. Just weird sounds, all sorts of stuff going on. And I would just save all that stuff and then go through it and go through Graffiti Falls and be like, what's this page about? What's the information going on in here? Go through the music, find what music sounds best for, this one's telling the epic backstory about the tunnel cave-in in Philadelphia, where all the people were trapped in the cart and they were killed off one by one by the demon. So you'd go through all the tracks, find whatever sounds good, and just throw it in there and be like, we'll go back to that later as soon as we get to the page, after we get through all the audio for the other stuff. And the music was more of just, once I did shit like that, it was just like, yep, it's done. Throw it in the file, have the audio going over it, and it always hit. There was never, nothing too much to do after that, which is a secret. So don't tell anybody.
Well, as the clock is ticking down, like it's on the screen, a couple of things before we do wrap this up. One is where and when are you aiming to release, and where can people, if they want to follow it and listen to it, where can they find it?
My Bandcamp,
which is
onedeadbeat.bandcamp.com, or my YouTube page. You can always donate. It'll probably be free. I don't know. It it's like 8 years to make, so maybe I should charge $3 for it. But whatever. Just would rather have people listen to it. I can't believe you listen to as much as you have in the time span that you have, because I don't think I have listened to it. I work on it, so when I work on it, that's obviously one thing. But actually, like, listening to the whole thing, I've listened to it about 2.5 times all the way through with the final editions, and I'm still just like, I have to shake it off after a couple pages. Like, I have to come back to reality and be like, whoa, what the fuck was that?
Well, I think what would be a great idea is, at the end of this, and what we do is I'll play now the chapter 1, the opening to it. And just before we do go, I mean, is there any thoughts on that particular opening? Again, because they say that, my experience as well, the hardest thing about writing is the first line. Was that something you did you the first line of what you did? Was that an instant first line or?
That is so true about the first line. I and honestly, I can't tell you what the first line is from Graffiti Falls, but I did have that in mind that, like, you know, the first line is always, you know, they call me Ishmael. That's it's, you know, that first line does have to be there. So yeah, in the final, I don't think I really mulled over it too hard on what the first line was, but in thinking of it, they call me Ishmael. That's I think I don't know that is something I think about when coming up with that first line is they call me Ishmael, and you have to sort of go from there.
When people talk about reality, they usually say there's a line that separates the real from the unreal. For me, that line is the underground cross-country subway line. The line. Coast to coast, border to border. The subway line that was America's plumbing. A seemingly endless tract of tunnels figurating over themselves deep under the earth. The line. I've spent enough miles on the line to reach the moon and back. I've ridden and rewritten it over and over and over, but it's constantly changing with each pass, morphing into something strange and new after every curve. Each new detail drawn in chalk like a cracked tally in a wasted mind. This really is the underbelly. An intricate system of ribbed tunnels leading further into digestion, feeding off man's hate, living on his inabilities, his fears. Run-down catacombs and hell's deteriorating stomach line. Oil and mud-slick veins pumping away the waste from point A to point B. People, humans, they were the vitamins, and they used to flow daily. Used to. You could see it in their fake, shiny faces, not knowing that it was they who kept the line healthy, alive, safe from the multiplying viruses roaming the small and large intestines. How long has it been? Too long. How long have I been down here? Not long enough. Entwined in the entrails of evil. 6 years. Blink. 5. Sweat. 7. I figure the longer I'm down here, the closer I am. Closer to him. Closer to it. That's how it happens. You get closer and closer. Then before you know it, you hit the wall. Where the hell am I? Revenge is a dish best served cold. Ohio. That's what people said. I just want revenge. Hot or cold. Utah? Utah? I know I'm not ready. It's okay. Nothing can prepare me. Me? Death is like birth. It just happens. That's alright, I guess. Minnesota? Sometimes I think I've always been here. Strange what the line will do to you. When did I sleep last? Would it make sense if I knew what I meant? Ohio? Would that change things? No. I don't know. Nobody knows. Not when they're sleeping. Sometimes these tunnels feel like sleep. A cold, deep sleep. Something only the dead could relate to. The line will do that to you.
Well, they say that life is people, and that people are angels, and that angels are devils, and the devils are me and you.